I think exams tend to interfere with the whole thing. O-levels, GCs, they make it even more difficult.
But it did seem to be purely circling around the fact that there was an exam to be passed, and it was just a load of facts which you just learnt. The thing was that I thought, well, you know, I mean, why?
And so one felt that there was the art side of the course, and there was the science side of the course, and you wanted from one part of school to the other, and you wanted from one world to another. I did 6 months in industry straight after school, and there I've had my basic inspiration for a good 4 years at university, just because I actually did what I'd learned. I used the equipment that the tools, the equipment that I'd learned at school.
I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but personally I learned a lot more from experiment than from theory.
I knew absolutely nothing about engineering, so I decided it's better the devil you know than the one you don't, and I picked chemistry. And I think this is true of a lot of people. They don't know anything at all about engineering, so they go into chemistry, which is probably a loss, because they might be better in the applied science.
It doesn't matter what subjects you do, you've got to combine theory with experiment. I mean, even if you do languages, you can't prove that it's assimilated to any degree unless you go abroad and try it out on the actual people.
At school, too many pupils experience education as merely a closed body of hard facts. Facts firmly anchored to the classroom and laboratory, finding known answers to long-solved problems which have lost their interest, their relevance, or both.
Progrès dans l'enseignement des langues.
Already, in languages, traditional teaching molds have cracked. Words no longer lie embalmed in textbooks, but are brought to bear on everyday problems and pursuits.
Au revoir, Madame Rivel. Au revoir, Madame Duval. À bientôt. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez?
Je voudrais rob Bert.
Even mathematics, for too long to too many a confusion of A's and B's, angles and lines, X's and Y's, can be stripped of its terrors to reveal not only its relevance, but often a cold, austere beauty. But in the world outside, subject boundaries are breaking down. Science, medicine and engineering are enriching one another and developing into new fields of creative technology. Fields such as bioengineering, where problems have no right or wrong answers. A world where knowledge is used creatively to design and build for human needs. Is the creative talent needed in these new technologies passing unnoticed through our schools simply because traditional concepts of education fail to recognize and develop it? In science teaching, the Nuffield approach has brought a major step forward. The pupil's allowed to find out for himself. Like real scientists, he builds his knowledge by trial and error. Insight is gained through experiment, by actually doing science. But thinking in science education has not stopped with Nuffield.
The Nuffield schemes are concerned with getting over the principles of the sciences in a much more interesting way than has been done in the past. But plenty of the pupils have this other creative element trying to get out, and in the normal school examinations getting no recognition at all. So in this way the project work approach is complementary.
At Sevenoaks School, the Technical Activities Centre aims to do just this.
To the experience of science, we add that of technology. The boys state their targets, as it were, but the master in charge provides the ladders. Thus, for instance, a boy wanting to make a radio-controlled aeroplane must study the elementary principles involved by following the courses mapped out for him. Practical interests must be used as a lead into the necessary theoretical studies. The centre tests and develops qualities which are all important in science and technology, but which do not always show up in the examination results. The centre is not a reluctant concession to a materialistic age. On the contrary, technology is welcomed as an additional dimension in which the individual can be creatively active. We see it as a natural extension of a liberal education.
An interesting and easily arranged extension is a school relationship with cooperative local industry. In this way, cross-fertilization of ideas and methods is broadening the horizons of the classroom in many of our schools throughout the country. Other schools are similarly trying to integrate creative technology into the normal curriculum.
Cray Valley Technical High School is a school where there is a broadly based curriculum, and within this curriculum, technology is learnt to give an extra breadth to the theoretical subjects which are studied. The problems which are presented at the early stages will naturally be modest, and the solutions may be fairly crude.
The jobs they attempt are modest jobs. They make little boxes, and in order to make a successful box, they must know how strong the box is going to be. And to that end, we make model joints. They test the model joints to find out how strong they are, and they will be able to use this information not only in the job they're making at the moment, but in later jobs where they have more ambitious projects to achieve. In the middle school, they make the steam engine. We have to make a casting for this, and the boys must learn the mechanical processes of making the mould, pouring the metal, and that leads us quite naturally into a study of the metals themselves and their properties. Each process, as we go through it, is linked with science of some sort. And this process of linking the building of their steam engine with its associated pure science is one which I find makes the boys particularly receptive. They've made a steam engine, and some of them will need a boiler. That leads us into a natural study of pressure vessels, and in order to study pressure vessels, we're able to predict the stresses and strains, and we do, in fact, make a model boiler and burst it under hydraulic pressure in order to verify their predictions. In the sixth form, the boys follow a normal academic course, plus this creative technology. One lad had already built himself a go-kart, but his difficulty was that it would not stop. Here was a problem, how to stop it. This problem has been solved. The boy designed, manufactured a hydraulic disc brake. Everything was made at the school, and it was the boy's solution to his problem.
I believe that with these youngsters, if you can find something which captures their interest, I think that this is the whole point, and give them something to do, they will stretch themselves. You can never say with these things, I mean, they can end in failure. But does that matter? I mean, they've learned something in the process. They're actually measuring reaction time, see? Now, at the same time they switch on, the Banny counter starts counting, and as soon as it's knocked off, it freezes at that particular number. So they read off their reaction time in hundredths of a second. Oh, well, of course, these are the girls who you would normally class the less able child, just below CSE. In Russia, 35% of professional engineers are women. In this country, it's 0.1%. It doesn't mean that they can't do it. I think it simply means that they aren't given the opportunity.
The Player Secondary Modern School Nottingham is providing this opportunity. And similarly, the Gateway School Leicester, which sees this sort of work as essential for even the most academically able.
This school was founded with one aim in mind, to create a school appropriate for the 20th century. We believe this kind of work should be done because it's educationally desirable. In fact, it's an educational necessity. Adolescents need a sense of success. The fundamental rule of the school is that the individual counts. Everything stems from that. And therefore, in the lower part of the school, the fundamental point about the work is the creative crafts, and in the upper end of the school, the fundamental thing is technological studies.
Mr. Page says you could build a machine on a logic system that would play noughts and crosses. And this interested me. It'd be something I could invent myself. I've got rather flattered my ego that I could invent something. I used to find that science at times did tend to be a bit limiting. You get the tremendous scope for originality, I think because he wasn't a scientist or a mathematician, he probably got more out of this because it gave him an opportunity to see the other side, you know.
It was suggested that the harmonograph could be used to extend the study of harmonic motion, and harmonograms were drawn. Well, these were very amusing and very interesting, but it was noticed that on some of them we saw a secondary pattern, which wasn't actually scribed by the pen, and producing what we later discovered was a Mori pattern, and it was soon noticed that in fact this was an amplifying device, because if you move the point of vision very slightly, you got a large disturbance of the pattern. And it was thought that we could make use of this amplifying factor to design and construct a comparator. This was done by setting up one grating on a piece of perspex, making the main scale, and superimposed in front of this another piece of the same grating. The photoresistor would respond to the dark fringes passing across the light. So we had now a device that would count the fringes required to bring the carriage up to one end of the gauge piece. The study of the recording of fingerprints was then topical. We found that by using parallel gratings on fingerprints, we were producing Mori patterns. Was there here, in fact, a useful line of inquiry that would help us to find a method whereby fingerprints could be classified?
We thought it would be an excellent idea to have plastic formings for various reasons, so we decided we would build our own. Well, it worked very well indeed, and we allowed an initial sum of £20 to cover this.
I'm not here to teach engineering, I'm here to teach boys. I think that I teach engineering at schools simply to broaden the boys' education. Just to make the boys look up and outside and see what is going on in the big wide world outside. In the sixth form, the boy starts a project. His report is submitted to the Cambridge examiners, and any grading he gets as a result of this report is added on to his A-level physics as a bonus. Well, I think this is the best possible compromise between having no examination at all and having a fully examined subject. I think something like an O-level or an A-level in engineering would absolutely kill it. Stone dead at Dauntsey's, anyway. Well, this started as a sixth form project, and these boys took over to see what was what in rockets. And they did a few experiments with them, measuring thrust. Fluidics is the use of air or fluid under pressure to do the things which electronics things can do. In other words, you could make a fluidics computer. This boy decided that anything the electronics people could do, he could do. He set about trying to do it. He therefore decided to use water as the fluid. Now this was demonstrating the Coanda effect, in fact, the fact that water will stick to one side or the other side of a suitably shaped channel unless it's forced to change its position by some small pressure from the side.
And what the young man was learning by experiment, industry is applying, using the same principles to develop a pressure-actuated water switch.
Mr. Watson since told me that the examiner said to him, see a chap of yours doing fluidics, talks about the kind of effect. I bet you he doesn't know a thing about what he's talking about. He's copied it all out of swap.
This is a typical case of the boy knowing more than the master. Now the Schlieren thing, yes. Now this was another self-motivated project, really.
But the most important amount of information I learned was the use of Schlieren, the actual application of the apparatus, which is of course a very important system. It isn't used so much in the way I used it. It's used in testing wing shapes.
in wind tunnels more often.
And he thought that if he could actually see osmosis taking place by Schlieren methods, then this would be an ideal project.
I became interested in the air tracks, mainly because it's an industrial application of just a piece of apparatus.
Well, I think this is the ideal engineering project at school level. He built the air track because he wanted to build an air track for no other reason at all. And then it was obvious that some sort of investigation had to be arranged to comply with the regulations for the examination. And it started off because the boy wanted to do it, and he learnt more from it than he could possibly have learnt from any other source.
The engineering science syllabus is being developed by the Joint Matriculation Board as an alternative to traditional A-level physics. This new examination is essentially physical science, based largely on engineering concepts and engineering techniques. With mathematics, it has gained acceptance by many university departments of both physics and engineering, and does not require the student to burn his boats at 16 or 18 years of age.
The topics in the engineering science syllabus is composed of the topics one would find in the A-level syllabus, but grouped together under different headings, such as the flow of heat, flow of electricity, and flow of fluids would be grouped together under the heading of transport phenomena. Basically, I think, in developing principles, wherever possible, through applications rather than from principles to applications. A simple example would be Bernoulli's principle, where we might start by thinking of flight, the lift force necessary on wing sections, and investigate from this the elementary principles of fluid flow, and then working back to explain how the relationship between velocity in a fluid and reduction in pressure leads to a lift force. We would expect him to conduct investigations into, say, comparison of methods for some determination, maybe moment of inertia of a disk. He'd probably start with the rolling disk method. They can also undertake a project. Examples, the linear induction motor.
Well, the practical skills for this sort of work are introduced in the junior forms. Handicraft has been recast so that boys are required to plan and think creatively, even with the simplest problem they have to solve. For example, a bracket. Third-year boys, when designing a small G-clamp, determine the best form of frame by experimental methods. Many different steel frames are made of the same size and with the same cross-sectional area, but with the shape, the distribution of metal, and the method of making varied. This simple loading apparatus is used to determine which of the frames is stiffest and therefore most suitable. However, this method is not sensitive enough to be conclusive, and the final shape is determined by examining the stress patterns in photoelastic models.
The Rugby College of Engineering Technology is now trying to equip teachers with the necessary skills for introducing creative technology to their pupils.
We're trying to give teachers in schools sufficient background so that they can start and maintain project work in schools. For craft teachers we do basic science, on the other hand for science teachers we do basic crafts. Nowadays electronics is involved in so many aspects of modern technology that it is important that all teachers have got some idea of this, and they all make a bistable unit. This is virtually a starting point for a variety of other projects, and so each course member used his bistable unit, which has all been combined in this small binary adder. We have encouraged the teachers on the course to investigate various ways of flow measurement, and on the water wheel the device is an ordinary standard V notch, where the head of the water flowing over it is proportional to the rate of flow of water. it is emphasised all the way along that it is eventually for the benefit of the pupils, the children, not so much for the teacher that comes on the course. And I feel that in the whole field of project work, this must always be remembered.
The development of this approach to learning, based upon demonstrations, applications, problem-type experiments, open-ended investigations and projects, may seem at first a bit frightening. But one cannot rightly conceive of the curriculum as made up of three separate elements, the literary, the scientific and the technological. One must think in terms of an integrated curriculum, with technology providing the integrating factor for the whole.
These many differing philosophies have one common objective: to develop the pupils' creative qualities of imaginative thought. Whatever their chosen careers, they will all enjoy one vital advantage: the advantage of understanding some of the science and technology in their fast-changing world, enabling them more easily to meet and overcome the problems of progress and of human happiness.
And what is the purpose of education? Is it filling a pot or is it lighting a fire? The answer, of course, is lighting a fire. The act of creation lights the fire within the boy and enables him to want to go forward under his own momentum and not the momentum of the